You know what, Jamie? Let's pop off right now. We got to get started.
We gotta go.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's get the people in the chat. To Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Thursday, September 14th, and we are here to preview the Central Michigan game that's coming up this weekend. And we're going to talk about some Notre Dame hype, about whether or not that's getting a little bit out of control, whether or not that's even a bad thing to get out of control. We'll see as the big Ohio State game is coming up. As we just started recording, Marcus Freeman's having his Thursday press conference. And as Jamie predicted, I think on Tuesday, J.D. Bertrand is going to be out. He is not going to play in this game. So we'll talk about what that means for who could step in for him. Could this be a big Drake Bowen game, right? If he can get some backup reps behind probably Jack Kaiser, who will fill in for that role. But we're going to talk about all of that and other things pertaining to college football. So, hey, if this is your first time catching us live, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell so you know we're going live. If you prefer the audio format of this show, links to the podcast are in the description below. Before we get going, Jamie, as always, we need to talk about one of our sponsors, ESQ Clothing. And if you're looking to upgrade your wardrobe, ESQ has created the world's first bamboo dress shirt. It's crafted from high-quality bamboo fabric, the softest and most comfortable shirt you'll ever put on. Not only more sustainable than cotton, but feels cooler, has stretch, is odor and wrinkle resistant. And the best part, Jamie, machine washable, saving on dry cleaning bills. So you've seen ESQ's one-piece collar bamboo dress shirt all over the place, and it's the perfect shirt for today's business meeting or heading for a night out. Use ISD15 and get 15% off all online items. That's ISD15 for 15% off. Jamie, I was prepping for the show, and the quote on the Twitter machine from Jay Norvell.
Oh yeah.
His mom said that when you go to meet adults, you take off your hat and you take off your glasses. Personally, I think that's a weird thing for your mom to tell you, right? My mom never had the occasion to tell me, "Hey, Greg, make sure to take off your hat and glasses when you're talking to adults." But that got me thinking, Jamie, about what moms are teaching us. And I'm wondering, Jamie, what did your mom teach you when young Jamie was running around? What did your mom teach you?
She definitely did not care about me wearing a hat. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I remember that. Just a quick little story on my uncle who got mad at me for wearing a baseball hat inside, but yet his son, my cousin, who I love my cousin, he was wearing a cowboy hat inside, and he seemed to be fine doing it. Luckily, my aunt divorced that uncle, and he's a loser. So just there's that quick story there. No, my mom, you know what? My mom is wonderful. She's always just teaching me empathy, right? She's big on empathy, being kind.
Yes.
Always good to get that from your mom, right? Treat people right. That's kind of a big theme overall with my mom. Be loyal to family and stuff like that. She didn't really care about the hats and glasses thing. Never actually heard that. I mean, Jay Norvell, older than me, maybe it's a little bit of a different generational thing. Also, just what Jay Norvell, why are you talking? Now they're gonna put a 50 on you. Like just don't.
You're gonna put a 50 in the first half.
Yeah.
Ridiculous quote. Yeah, man, that's all good stuff from Mrs. Uyama. My mother, Becky, she's a big, like, don't be a moron. She's big on that. Like, don't act right. Kind of like your mom, act right, do the right thing. She was also like, she obviously was, I played all the sports growing up. She was, into that, but like, Greg, you need to really focus on your academics. You need to focus on school more. Because ironically, and I tell her this all the time, like ironically, any free time that I had is like you could be studying or I could be watching a Notre Dame replay back, right? I could be doing that. And that's usually what I was doing. And she was always saying, Greg, why are you watching Notre Dame replays all the time? And she didn't like that, but here I am. And so I tell her all the time, like, see, Mom, I wasn't just wasting my time. There was actually something to this. But her advice, I definitely should have taken my academics more seriously in high school, especially. So, not that I wasn't like wasn't a bad student or anything like that. It was just like I didn't, I didn't reach my potential as a student in high school. I did in college, which is nice, which she appreciated.
Yeah, also hilarious kind of segue into that too. My cousin, when he was, a good high school football player
Yeah.
and was, being recruited to play college football, and one of the a college coach came by to recruit him and said, looked at his grades and said, I think he needs to spend a little bit more time in the classroom and less time in the weight room. Well, he had the last laugh. The guy was a strength coach in the NFL for over 10 years. So suck it to that coach. Just another, just full of stories today.
It's like as long as I think people like you prioritize what you prioritize, and you should prioritize education.
Yeah, you should.
But it is funny how like people like they if you care about something, like keep going after that thing, right? Because it can, who knows?
If you're passionate about something, it a lot of times too, you know what, like it's not that school's not important, it is important, but like you can find your niche within school or within something else, and if you are passionate about it, let's go and pursue it, right? So shoot for your dreams.
Yeah, shoot for your dreams. CFB Hurts mom says most important advice is to always make sure your underwear doesn't have holes in case you get in an accident, you need to go to the hospital. That's true. That's true. Good advice.
TMI, but
you want to make sure you're all good. You're all good. CFB Hertz also says the fact that I'm expected to work during college football season is cruel and unusual. This is unconstitutional. Where's Nathan? Where's his message? I saw it in here. He's at work. Nathan's at work, listening to Hit and Hustle. I mean, we've got people at work. We've got people on airplanes, people in Korea, all over the world listening to Hit and Hustle. So we really appreciate everybody. All right, Jamie, I want to talk a little bit about the growing, I guess we'll call it hype around Notre Dame football. I think people were waiting. You see the result against Navy. You see the result against Tennessee State. And there's people are waiting to kind of see, like, okay, is this like real or is it not? And then you go out, Notre Dame goes out and blows out NC State in the second half. What do you people are talking, Joel Klatt's talking about Notre Dame's for real, and on and on and on. Heisman talk now, Jamie. For Sam Hartman. What do you think of this? Do you think people are overreacting a little bit?
I mean, partially because it's like they played really well. It's kind of been a one-game season. Like, let's be honest, right? But in saying that, like they've taken care of business. So I don't think and people got to get excited about something, because right now, like when we talked about somebody's asked like, oh, what's the top five, or who's the top teams right now? And it's like, no one's really played anyone. Like Texas gets the bump because they beat Alabama at Alabama. Like that's a big deal. I know Alabama doesn't have a quarterback, but they still have a ton of dudes on their team, and Texas beat them. And Texas obviously has talent. Like that's easily the biggest win for Texas football. I can't even remember when. Like it's probably been over a decade since they had a win that big, right? So that kind of stuff matters. I think it does matter going on the road and beating NC State. I realize it's not the same team as it was the last 2 years, but they had won 16-17 at home. They have dudes on defense. Those guys played well in the game too, right? So that's part of it. But I think you look at where Notre Dame's at and what they've kind of done so far, and like if you look at it like kind of like numbers and stats and all these kind of things that they've done, it's hard not to at least they can have some hype around them. They've earned it. I think so, right? Like but from how they played. And I think really, like, if you think how they finished the game, they scored, it was 24-17 at the beginning of the fourth quarter, right? I wrote about this in Six Thoughts, that they scored 21 answered up until the final garbage time drive to end the game. They outgained NC State 103-32, 7.9 YPP to 2.7. They're 3 of 4 on third down, had 2 interceptions, and they only allowed 1 first down during that time until that last garbage time drive. So, I mean, they answered the bell with adversity. It was like a weird day and all these kind of things that happened. They created explosive plays against a defense that, I mean, isn't probably going to give up a ton this year. Like they're a good defense. Tony Gibson's a good recruiter. They have good players. So, I mean, I think they earned some hype. And I think if that game it was like a standard game and didn't get delayed, it probably would have even got more attention nationally, because it kind of like bled into the Texas A&M Miami game and all that too. So I think it's earned. Like they've done well, but then guess what? They got to go out and prove it again. They're going to play. They have that stretch: Ohio State, Duke, Louisville, USC, and then everything gets adjusted from there, right? And that's what it is. You get evaluated every week.
Yeah. Speaking of Texas's biggest win, Mitchell Vahilek, I was going to make this point. I think it's Texas' biggest win since 2016 ND. You don't think of it like that because Notre Dame was 4-8 that year, right? But at the time, I think they were top 10.
It did seem there was a lot of Texas is back talk.
Texas is back. I mean, what was Notre Dame, 9?
Something
at the
like
time?
That,
They were a top 10 team. So that was a huge win for them. And it didn't go well for either team. I do think that, like, Alabama, like here's the thing. Milroe made some errors in that game, but they also played well enough to where, like, if Texas was just like not a good team, Alabama would have won the game. So I think Texas really showed something in that one. For Notre Dame, I think that's Tyler Hack says Bama going 4-8. That'd be something. That'd be unbelievable. I don't think that's gonna happen though. But yeah, I think it's true, and I think if Notre Dame was like secretly, like, quote unquote, a bad team, there would be things about them and the way that they play and the way that they look that would kind of show up. Like I remember go back to Bob Davie, because there were a lot of Bob Davie comparisons last year to Marcus Freeman. And Bob Davie in his good years, like if you go back and watch, and I'm a weirdo about these things. So I actually do watch like 98 games and 2000 games. So, but
your mom was right.
My mom was right. But when you watch it, it's like when you especially have the distance of time and you watch the games, you're like, man, this is kind of like a mess. Like, especially the 98 team. Like Jarius Jackson was good, but it was very messy and chaotic. And I feel like Notre Dame is not that, right? And I think if you weren't a good coach and you weren't a good staff and it was just winning games based on who you're playing, it wouldn't look as good and as crisp as Notre Dame does right now. That's just my impression. And I think that comes through. So there, on one hand, there's you haven't played anybody piece. And on the other hand, there is an eye test element to the way Notre Dame plays and how they've played and how they've performed. It's not like a mess. It's not messy. It's not sloppy. I understand the penalties and that sort of thing, but penalties to me are somewhat they're variable. Like you can have a 10 penalty game, and because Notre Dame wasn't highly penalized in either of their first 2 matchups, like that was weird for them to have as many penalties as they have. They didn't have a ton of penalties in a game like last year. They weren't like a penalty problem last year. So I feel like Saturday was an anomaly. I mean, we'll see as the season goes forward. But beyond that, I don't see a bunch of sloppiness. I don't see a bunch of guys don't really know what they're doing. A bunch of like mental errors, like blown assignments that way. There's physical errors, and those get corrected. But I don't see a bunch of mental errors. So I agree with you. Like I think people are for, I guess, for narrative purposes, kind of jumping the gun a little bit, but there is something to it in the way that they're playing that that I think, you know, is repeatable, and I think can be kind of the expectation going forward for Notre Dame. What do you think there, Jamie?
Yeah, I think that's all true. I'd be interested to see. I think a lot of the penalties too, even though they weren't like, false starts or concentration penalties. I think some of that has to do with just being on
Yeah,
the road, you know, being on the road, and
yeah,
that part's um, a big piece of it. Um, I don't know. Like, I just kind of feel like what I've seen from the team um, is like the team is really locked in.
yeah.
Like um, even like there's some like execution stuff on offense that I think stood out. You mentioned those kind of like third down rub routes and stuff like that. Like
Mm-hmm.
that was like some of the stuff there, but like I just really think like the level of the team, and specifically on defense, like just kind of like um the attention to detail
Mm-hmm.
is higher. It just that's what you notice when you blow out teams that you're supposed to blow out, and you dominate teams that you're supposed to blow out. And I've just seen that, which is also why like there's people are talking in the um in the chat about how they're going to do against CMU. And I do think Central Michigan, they'll come out and play tough. They will. And I like they got a really good defensive tackle. Jacques Bristol is like he's good. He's good. Or I don't know why I call him Bristol. I think it's Bristol. Sorry. But he's balled out, and he was very good against Michigan State. But I mean, they just got lit up by New Hampshire,
Mm-hmm.
and they also have a quarterback who isn't really a quarterback. It's just like an athlete there
Mm-hmm.
playing. They need a lot of stuff to go right for it to be a close game. And I just think just the attention to detail just and that's how you become good. And if you do that too, then it means that when they're playing Ohio State, they're playing USC, whatever, it's like those teams to beat Notre Dame have to play their A game. Because if they don't, they're not going to beat Notre Dame because Notre Dame is playing at a certain level, right? And so I think that that's what I've seen from Notre Dame this year, and I just like I'm just really a believer in that being a big part of success for a team, and just the growing kind of confidence that you've seen from the players too. So um, I we'll see how it all plays out during the season. But I mean, I'm a believer that this team is very good.
Yeah, I'm with you there, especially like you said, defensively. It will be interesting, and we can kind of use this as a transition to Central Michigan talk. It will be interesting to see, like, against NC State, the defense was very clued into, um, keeping Brennan Armstrong in the pocket and not letting him outside, and not rushing too hard and not getting upfield too much, right? Just being very disciplined on that end. And that's very easy to do when you're very clued into the game plan and you're locked in, focused, and that sort of thing. And then you come up against a team like Central Michigan where you you don't need to be, I don't think, as concerned about their quarterback running, but I feel like if they're going to do anything against Notre Dame offensively, it's going to be because that quarterback is giving them problems, getting outside the pocket and running for first down, scrambling around. It'll just be interesting to see, like, are they as attuned to their lanes? Are they disciplined with the game plan? Are as disciplined with the game plan this week as they were last week with Brennan Armstrong? That's going to be something to to keep track of, because if it does, and if they are like locked in as they were last week, then that's a really good sign for them, just like their purpose and their focus, like you said, Jamie, attention to detail. we can get into just kind of some game talk here. Nathan Urbach asked a game-specific question. How do you guys feel Notre Dame handles linebacker this week with Bertrand out? Leave Maris Kaiser alone and plug and play Bowen, or give Steve more reps in the traditional linebacker role?
I mean, obviously Kaiser and Maris are going to start,
Yeah.
and I mean, I'd say they're going to play. They're going to play the starter reps that you'll
Yeah.
see. Like I don't think we'll see Bowen. They might actually, because just to kind of have like a veteran in with each, I could see them doing a little bit of like Kaiser and Sneed, right? And then Bowen
Yeah.
gets to play with Maris. So it's like a little bit of that mix where it's like you're not putting just two guys. I mean, at some point it's going to be that, I'm sure, but like if they're playing guys early in the game, I think you could see that. But I don't know. Like, I think, I mean, Snead is definitely going to play a lot of like regular Will in this game.
Mm-hmm.
More so. Like, I mean, Maris played like 70 plays in the last game, and I
Yeah.
think that's kind of like what you're going to see. So it's funny because that's one thing that probably we didn't harp on enough is that it's obvious Watts is safety one. He's the top guy, and Maris, and if Bertrand would have stayed in the game, they would have played the large. It would have been him and Maris would have played just a large chunk of the plays, snaps at linebacker, and that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of how it is, right? Um, so I think like in this game, yeah, it's they have to get Snead reps there because they just need him to get more reps, and he's just not he's not close to being fully polished as a linebacker, and he needs as many reps as possible, and you want to see that because, and it's weird too because it's hard to get him into the sub packages because Marist, this has been so good that it's like, so are we taking Marist off for this, or
Yeah.
what are you doing there, right? And maybe they'll find a way to get both of them in at the
Yeah.
same time, but um yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, Rob mentioned that. Yeah, Freeman said that Osbury he'll get into, but I mean, this is for all this game, right? Like
Yeah.
Osbury's going to play. It's going to be similar to kind of like the Tennessee State game in a lot of ways. I think as long as Notre Dame takes care of business, which I think they will.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if this quote from Freeman talking about Snead, Bowen, and Osbury seeing increased time with him out, I wonder if that's just him kind of pumping those guys up, basically saying like, we like you a lot. Because why would it matter for like Osbury specifically? Like why would that matter? Does he play Mike?
No.
Like I'm asking. I don't think he does. So like I don't know why it would matter to him. I just think he might want to play him just generally. And it's like it's like I'm just kind of like I'm talking about the guys that I like on the team, right? I think that's an interesting comment just in that like they really like the way that that Al Golden was talking about Drake Bowen during the week was like, he loves him. He
Yeah.
loves his game. He loves the type of player that he is. And he kind of I think he kind of feels about Drake Bowen the way I do. Like he is just a kid who is going to be successful, and he's like a no BS, like no big deal. I'm going to go out there and play and make plays. And he's always been like that. He's been like that. He was like that in high school with baseball and football. And he's been like that so far at Notre Dame. So I think Freeman is just saying like, hey, I like these guys, and I'm gonna put him in the game. Rajon says, if you put Osbury's head on Snead, how good would he be? I mean,
I think a lot of it's experience.
Yeah.
Just Osbury has played linebacker probably since he was 9 years old or something. You know what I mean? Like he's been a linebacker, and you could just tell he's a guy like, that's why we kind of said like he's got that kind of.
He's got a brother in college now, like he's got someone to kind of look up to there.
Snead played 3 different positions in 3 different years in high school because it was what his high school needed, right?
Yeah.
So he's very similar to JOK in that way, right? Where it was like, this guy's just multi-position star, just doing whatever is asked of him. Like, he played free safety as a senior in high school, right? So it's a lot harder. Linebacker is a very hard position to play. Maybe the hardest position on defense, just in terms of mentally, what you need to know. And then plus you have to like take on guards, chase guys down in space, be disciplined in your reads. And there's just a lot there. So it's not to say that it's like, oh yeah, if he had Osbury's experience, I'm sure he would be thriving, but it's not always like just plug and play for guys, especially guys who haven't played that much at the position.
Right. And just to kind of hone in on the importance of linebacker, and like what Jamie said, the mental, like there's a mental and physical aspect to the same kind of thing. So like when we talk about run fits, I mean, it matters what shoulder you take on a guard with. Like that matters. And that is a physical thing, but it's also a mental thing. Like that is why it's so difficult, because if you fill a gap with your inside shoulder instead of your outside shoulder, you could blow up the whole defense. And all of a sudden you've got, it was kind of like the spring game with Drake Bowen. Like he filled the gap with the wrong shoulder. And so that left them vulnerable in the C gap. Jabron Payne jumps outside and he has a 30-yard game because of that, right? If he takes it on with the other shoulder, it's probably like a 2-3 yard thing, and it's a nothing play, right? Like that's the mental, but also the physical aspect. And that's what makes it so difficult, because it's a thing that not just happens, but it happens in an instant and you have to do it immediately, right? Which is to say, like, that's why you see such an improvement with Marist right now, is because when your head is spinning, you don't play as fast and you're not as certain, and you start to do things like I'm filling the wrong gap, or I'm taking the wrong shoulder, right? Marist is making all the right moves right now, as evidenced by the play I put on Twitter when he blows up the screen. Like that is a perfect example of like, I don't need to go chase over here. I'm going to sit in the middle of the field, and then they show me something, they throw it, and I'm going to go and I'm going to come, right? And I'm coming real hard, right? That's the difference between someone like Marist and maybe someone like Jalen Sneed, who has the ability but isn't there mentally yet. And he'll get there, right? Like we believe in Notre Dame's coaches that he'll get there, just like JOK did. Patrick Carter with maybe the greatest question that's ever been asked in this show, in this chat. Are we doing what ifs now? What if you put Kyle Hamilton's head on Kyle Hamilton's body? How many offensive touchdowns could he have scored in 2021? The possibilities are endless.
There isn't
limitless.
a number that you can
Patrick,
put up there.
You can't come up with a number. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you. You are the chatter of the day. Thank you for being here. Please come to every show with your great knowledge and wisdom. I love to hear that. To Joe Alt's head. What if we put Joe Alt's head on Tobias Merriweather's body? See how it handles the difference in athleticism. It's good stuff. It's a great question. All right, Jamie. So let's do full preview. Let's do full preview here. Notre Dame's offense against Central Michigan's defense. You mentioned they have a good defensive tackle. Notre Dame has struggled against MAC teams in the recent past. Is this a possibility
that they would win? No, they're not going to win the game at all. Like
no. Is it a possibility they'll struggle?
There's a possibility that it could be like a frustrating quarter and a half.
How mad will Mike Frank be during this game?
I mean, it's who's to say? Who's to say? I mean, the one thing that'll be interesting for Central Michigan is they were greatly overmatched against Michigan State, right?
Yeah.
And guys, just spoiler alert, Notre Dame is a better team than Michigan State.
Yes.
So they're greatly overmatched against Michigan State, and it was 10-7 at half, and for Michigan State, but CMU got stopped on a 4th and goal. So it was like tight. It was tight. Mm-hmm. It was tight. And they stuffed Michigan State a couple times in short yardage, excuse me. So yeah, they can compete, and they've had games in the past where they've been tight with Power 5 opponents. Um, but their top corner in that game got just cooked by Michigan State. So this is the guy who's like all MAC, their best guy. So he got cooked by Michigan State. Their linebackers just got absolutely destroyed. Labe, that Lee Weaver's mentioning in New Hampshire, 12 catches, 295. I know this guy was like Danny Woodhead Jr. Like he's a good player. He's a very good player. But yes, Love, Price, Payne, whatever. Like these guys are going to. It's a matchup problem for them. So they're going to struggle with that. And let's just face it too. They have to get like, they're going to be ultra aggressive because that's kind of how they've been, but it opens them up for big plays. And they gave up a ton. They gave up so many against New Hampshire. They're like near the bottom of the nation in explosive plays that given up. So from that sense too, like I just don't see them, even if they get a stop or two or something, and something happens, a ball comes out, whatever, something like that happens, they just won't be able to stay with, because of it. Like that'll be like the next drive, boom, explosive plays, touchdown. Like it's going to happen. And then the other thing is that they are so overmatched up front on offense, with their offensive line is not going to be able to block Notre Dame's defensive line. And they just are going to struggle they really struggle to run against Michigan State. They ran well against New Hampshire. They're going to struggle to run against Notre Dame. And it has to be, so Bert Emanuel Jr., who's obviously the son of Bert Emanuel, the former NFL receiver. I mean, this guy should be playing receiver somewhere. He's not a true quarterback. He's not very accurate, but they threw the ball deep like 10 times against New Hampshire. So that's not a recipe for success against Notre Dame. You're going to like test Notre Dame's corners deep. They don't have the guys to win outside there. So if that's what they do, it's going to be like ugly. And then I don't know if they'll be able to protect him. They've given up 8 sacks. The havoc rate against him has been 21% too. So, then one of those games was against the FCS team, right? So it's just, they need like all this stuff to go right. They need like, think of even if that Tennessee State game, they had stuff go right for them in that game. They still averaged like less than 3 yards per play on offense, right? Like,
Yeah.
So it's going to be a struggle for Central Michigan. And then like talent wise too, they're like on paper, they're one of the least talented teams in the MAC. In the MAC, not just like in the country basically, but in the MAC. So it's not going to be, it's not going to be a close game. They just don't have enough guys to Metro. So Toledo, when Toledo came, first of all, that ND team was 2021 team worse than this team. I think we can say that for sure. Also like had serious problems up front. They couldn't even really run the ball consistently at that point in the year too.
Right.
And Toledo had some players. Like they had way more players than this Central Michigan team. So it's just, and even then, like the pick six and stuff in that Toledo game, like they needed that kind of thing to happen for it to work out for them. Central Michigan might have that kind of stuff happen, and then it's like, oh my gosh, like what's happening? So if Notre Dame comes out and plays sloppy at the beginning, yeah, it could be frustrating for a little bit. Maybe it means that the starters have to play 3 quarters instead of 2.5 or whatever.
I mean, we talked about it. I hope the starters play more, regardless. Like I want them out there. I want them getting ready for not just Ohio State, but the season. It's time to get sharp. It's time to get game fit. And you know how it is, Jamie. Like there is no fitness. I don't care how hard you work in the off season. There is no fitness like game fitness.
No.
And the only way to acquire it is to play. And so I think that's important. Obviously, don't be dumb, but you got to be out there. You got to get your guys physically ready to go. ND Nation, thank you for the super chat. Should we be concerned of wide receiver speed and separation?
First of all, I always want to just shout out ND Nation because he's given us a lot of super chats, and
Yeah,
he
man.
always picks $1.99, which is always it's just like I just like that it's like this is like getting it right in. Like this is a real price. This is how they price things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not $2, it's $1.99. But I mean, I think you can say it is somewhat of a concern because I just don't think um, Notre Dame doesn't have I mean, they certainly can't match Ohio State and USC in terms of what they have at speed at the receiver position. So I guess from that perspective, you can say it's a concern. But I posted that thing today, and yes, it's early and who they've played, but they have one less explosive play than USC in the first 3 games, and USC has played the same amount of 3 games, right? So where they've had guys come out too, so they've found ways and been explosive. They have, Stays has had 3 explosives. We had them all in the last game. Great House has had 3 explosives, and Thomas has had 2. And Tyrese had 3, right?
Yeah.
So they found ways to do it, and that's kind of like what you're looking for out of Tyree. And even though it was kind of like a broken play, that's you just want something like that from Tyree every game. Tobias had his explosive play, so they just don't have a dominant guy. But if they find something like just that play to Tobias where he's catching it and it's like at 15 yards, but he takes it for 44 or whatever it
Yeah.
was, right?
Yeah.
Like that's big. And if also Peyton Wilson wasn't just like an absolute freak of nature who looked like he was sped up, get the turbo butted,
Oof.
then maybe that's a house call, right? So
Yeah.
I think that it's somewhat of a concern, but they found ways to be explosive without it, and certainly no one thought that Estime was like this home run hitter guy, and then he's got a 50-yarder and he's got an 80-yarder in back.
That was great to see. That was great to see. Just the fact that it's there and it can happen, like I was starting to get really concerned about that. I mean, look, don't waste it against Tennessee State, right? Let's see it against NC State, like a real team. So that's good. I was happy about that. To play devil's advocate a little bit, and I know you're just the explosives are the explosives, right? So 20+ yard pass. And so that counts, and that's all good. To be a little bit devil's advocate about that, there is an eye test element to it in that, like, it's kind of like the blue chip ratio, right? Where it's like, if Notre Dame and Georgia both have 19, 5, and 4 stars, right? Blue chip ratio, 19, whatever. Well, if like Georgia has 10 5 stars and Notre Dame has 2 and the rest are 4 stars, like it's a little bit different, right? So like the explosives that USC's hitting, like they're hitting like 70+ yard bombs, like there is a difference there. And so there is a like just an eye test element to, we got to like the pass to Jaden Thomas is like a good example of like that's what, when people talk about like speed and separation and like getting over the top, like that's the kind of play that I think people most likely think of. Now, to your point, like gaining like 11.1 yards per attempt is what it is, and that's very good, right? So that's a good explosive passing game there, right? It's just that element of it that people are wanting. And there's another part too where it's not even so much like speed getting over the top, but when Notre Dame, and they struggled with this against NC State, and we talked about this a little bit, Jamie, and they're gonna be an issue against Ohio State as well, is when you have a team that's getting pressure like Ohio State will, that ball's got to come out. And that means your receivers have to get into their routes, whatever they are. It's got to happen quick. And there was the play before halftime where Notre Dame didn't get into their mesh fast enough. Those guys didn't get across the field. It was Greathouse and it was Flores. They didn't get across the field fast enough. And Sam Hartman's just got to wait for it. And it took too long, and he ended up taking the sack, and Notre Dame has to kick a long field goal. Like that's where it can show up for me. So it's not so much speed getting over the top, because I think Notre Dame can scheme that stuff, but it's like the quick routes, the hot routes when Notre Dame's got to get rid of the ball quickly. You want to, and you want to see that mesh concept with like Chris Tyree. Rather see it with him than maybe Flores or Greathouse there. So it's not just over the top stuff is the main point. Corey Flynn brings up a good point about Notre Dame struggling with MAC teams. It's usually the bad quarterback play. Essentially, is
a valid point.
Is a very good point by Corey Flynn, and that's why having Sam Hartman is such a good thing. Not just because you raise the ceiling, but it also raises the floor. Right? There's been some low floors for Notre Dame against these MAC teams in the recent past. So that's a very good point by Corey Flynn. Wanted to highlight that. Patrick Carter asks, if you already mentioned, is there something you could see this Saturday on O or D that would give you more confidence against the Buckeyes?
Not really, to be honest. It's just like it's just a completely different level, right? So even if Notre Dame goes out and dominates everything, just like you do, how's that much different than what they did against Tennessee State and Navy? Not really that much different, right? So I think you really kind of feel the same about it, and the level of players, the intensity of that game, the night. It's a night game. You're going to be going against the speed of that game is going to be so much greater than this game. That I don't think there's anything this week that you're doing. I guess if like the only thing is it's like they execute at a just extremely high level all around, then you're like, okay, like it's just those are just and then just getting like some more confidence builders for guys like Tobias, right? Like we mentioned or whatever, right? So that kind of thing. But maybe a punt block this week or something like that. Schrader, obviously he looked pretty good kicking the ball in the last game, but just getting more reps with it. And obviously you don't want to kick field goals, you want to score touchdowns, but it wouldn't be a bad thing if he got a couple more chances to kick and just feel more comfortable kicking for Notre Dame.
Yeah. I do think so. Defensively, definitely nothing. I think I've loved everything that I've really seen from the defense so far. And it's just like do it against the best competition. So there's nothing that they can do. For the offense, it is just those over the top explosives that would make me feel better. It's not like, oh, I saw them do it against Central Michigan, therefore they're going to do it against Ohio State and they're going to blow them out, kind of thing. Like, I don't think that's true. It would just give me more confidence. It's like, hey, they did it, right? They went and hit the play, right? And so it's like something that I saw them do. That's good evidence, and then we can move forward from there, kind of thing. So it wouldn't be like, okay, box checked, but it would just be like, all right, like it's on tape. It's something for Ohio State to look at, right? It's something that they got to think about. But to your point, Ohio State is a different level. It's a different level of play. It's going to be a different level of adrenaline. The stadium is going to have a different level of electricity to it.
Stakes are so much higher.
Stakes are so much different. Like it's going to be. It's one of the games of the year, right? So like you said, the level is completely different. And Jamie, if you have a business or if you're like a high school athlete and you want to take your highlight reel to the next level, you want to take your business social media game to the next level, what you can do is you can contact VSR Media Company at vsrmediacompany.com, which is founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh. VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior, and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106.
No one does the SEGs better. No one
does.
No one. They're saying it on Discord. They're saying it on Twitter. They're saying it everywhere. in the chat, everywhere.
Listen, you got to take pride in it, Jimmy. You got to take great pride. Nathan Urbach asks, bring it up. Here we go. Speaking of Estime, why do you guys think he doesn't get more love around the country from both an NFL draft perspective and is one of the better backs in college football?
NFL draft perspective, one, he's an underclassman who's like, kind of has to like kind of establish himself more. Two, passing game is just such a big part of playing in the NFL in terms of playing running back. And I mean, I certainly think he's improved there. But I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs, one of the reasons why he was a high pick was because of what he can do in the passing game. And so he's not really on that level in terms of the passing game stuff. And then the other thing is, I think he's had big games. He's done well. But he hasn't had that huge monster game against the top opponent. So that's why he's just like, I mean, you watch any time Notre Dame plays a game that it's on ABC, it's on Fox, whatever, right? Like the announcers are praising him and talking about like what a player he is, but you don't hear it on like game day or something like that because they only talk. It's just they only talk about the things that happen. So Caleb Williams, he got love because it's like, well, he did it against Notre Dame. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff matters, right? So if Audric Estime has a huge game against Ohio State, if he rushes for 200 against Ohio State, I mean, everybody's going to talk about him, right? If has that against USC, same thing, right? So that's I think in terms of that narrative it'll change then. But like, let's be honest, the guy is going to backs who knows when they get drafted for different reasons, but he's going to play in the NFL and enjoy him this year because I do not think he will be back next year. I think he'll be in the NFL next year.
When you say passing game, there's also a pass blocking aspect to that.
Yes.
And he needs to improve there greatly. He is not the best at it. Let's just put it like that. I mean, they put Jabron Payne in the game when they're doing that stuff. So that matters. But look, did people care about Kyron Williams until he broke off a 65-yard run on the first play against Clemson when they're playing the number one team in the country, then scored 3 touchdowns and had that kind of pass blocking performance? Like that's how it happens, right? You have a big game. So look, Audric Estime has 24 for 180 and 3 touchdowns against Ohio State and Notre Dame wins the game. Then he's going to be a big deal at that point. Nathan Urbach brings up something else too about Chris Tyree. I think this season goes on and Tyree becomes more and more comfortable as a wide receiver. I see him being the guy that separates, not necessarily over the top, but deep posts, wheels, etc. Like this is what I'm talking about in terms of we surmise because he's fast, they can get Tyree on an explosive down the field. Okay. I would like to see it, right? I don't want to think it's possible. I would like to see it happen. So this is something like if they hit Tyree on a post, perfect, right? There was a clip from either the spring or fall camp where he catches a slot fade. Like let's see that. That's something
I was going to bring that up, Greg.
Yeah, that's what I want to see. So that's something that just like it could give me more confidence. It absolutely would, right? Great Seg Flamong. Okay, let's go. Greg, the great Seg. That's whatever works out. All right, let's see if there's anything else. I feel like there was something else I was going to bring up, but I guess not. Okay, Jamie. So the spread is what?
34.5, I believe.
34.5.
Currently, I think it was a 34 before.
Someone brought up in the chat, I guess Josh Pate is taking Central Michigan and the points. I
Who cares what that guy thinks?
I assume.
How many minutes of Notre Dame football has Josh Pate watched? I'm really interested.
How dare you? He's breaking down the film.
He's on the all 22. No, there's no way. I mean, whatever. He's good at his job. Whatever. I'm not dissing him. Whatever. I'm just talking about like he is Colin Cowherd. He is whatever. Like he has to talk about these other things. So anytime it's like someone shares like, well, Josh Pate said this, it's like you might as well just say Colin Cowherd said. Like it's the same thing. There's too many things for him to watch.
Yeah.
So was he watching very few national guys have a good understanding of like most teams, right? That's why too, when they're like, oh, I called this upset, like look at all the ones they miss. They miss a lot, but no one, you shouldn't care because they just do the picks because people read them, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, do not get caught up in Josh Pate and whatever. And it's not anything about Josh Pate. As it's good, he's good at his job. He's good in his way as like a national guy, kind of talking about the national narratives. But that's a perfect example. Audric gets a big game against Ohio State. Guess who's going to be talking about next week? Josh Pate, right? Yeah. That's how it works.
Yeah. I think so like to the narrative point, I think it's just like Notre Dame has, struggled against the MAC recently. Ohio State's next week. They're going to be, they're going to be down, or they're going to overlook this game. They're going to be sloppy, let down, or whatever. That just reminded me I have to submit my my prediction to Mike on that. Have you done so already?
I've done so, yeah.
Okay. I'm interested to see if Notre Dame does come out slow in this game. Because if I'm Marcus, I'm hammering the point of like Ohio State week starts like now. Like now is Ohio State week. This game is part of your preparation for that week. Like I want to, and I don't mean in terms of like where they're actually game planning for Ohio State. I mean, like mentally, psychologically, your mindset, the way that you approach it. Like if you come out here flat, it tells me that you're not ready. You're not ready to compete with a team like that, with a team that has beaten you every single time. You haven't beaten Ohio State since 1936, World War II era. Like you haven't beaten this team. Like if you can't come out here and give me a good performance and be sharp and be on point and be motivated a week out, then you're not ready to beat them, and you won't beat them. Like that's how I'm approaching it in terms of just like, hey, I want to see great performance. Like now is the time. It's been 3 weeks. Congratulations on being 3-0. The team should not care about that. Like go out there. You need to be sharp. We need to be peaking right now. The whole lead up to the whole offseason has been about this time of year. So let me go see it. If I see poor play, if I see sloppiness, I'm going to be ticked off. Like I'm going to be ticked. And that's how Marcus should approach it. So, and I think that's how he will approach it because he seems like that type of guy. So I'm predicting, I think I said like 48-10. That's where I went with it. Jamie, where were you feeling?
I think I did 52-6.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah, I think I did 52-6. It's just one of these things too. Like I said, like why would I pick against like, well, a million things have to go right for them to get these kind of things. I'm like, it doesn't really make sense to do it. And also Notre Dame hasn't, they struggled the first two series against NC State. It was also tied at they were a 7-point lead in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
They were up by 28 at the end. Like, so they're going to kill them. They're going to kill them. It's not going to be close. It's not going to be close. Could weird stuff happen? Like the Devin Ford fumble, that whatever, get knocked out and somehow the guy doesn't get kicked out of the game. Yeah, sure. Could there be another thing where they force, Also, one of these days, the forced fumble they're going to recover it. Like that is going to happen. The other teams fumbled 7 times. They've recovered 0, right? So in a lot of ways, they've been unlucky.
Yeah.
Like it could be 28-0 in the first quarter. Like it might not be. That's if everything goes Notre Dame's way. It might not be, but it could happen, right? So, and I would say that is probably more likely than it's tight, So,
Yeah.
I just don't see them. Just the way Notre Dame has played, I just don't see them letting up and it being very close for very long.
Because you know what about Marcus Freeman, Jamie? You know what we had, and I just thought of this. You know what we haven't heard in 2 years? The phrase business trip.
Oh yeah. Yeah, business trip.
He doesn't think like that. So he doesn't say it, right? Like he is after like dominance. Like that is his thing. And I wondered if he could get his team to that point. And that's why I'm from like I would be comfortable saying, like, what did I say against Tennessee State? 55 and they scored 56. If they got up there in points against Navy, they put up 45. Like on a long pass, they put up 45. Right now, granted, it's not really designed to be an explosive. Like NC State didn't cover the back end, right? But Notre Dame, they're still throwing the ball, right? Late in the fourth quarter. You could have just run it, right? It's 3rd and 2. You could have just run it. They're throwing the ball. And so I think that he has that mindset. And also, like, he has a stable, to coin the phrase, like a stable of guys that are just hungry when they get in there, like Jabron Payne, for example, like Jeremiah Love, like Jadarian Price. Like when they get in there, they're hungry. There are no, like you're not getting to the walk-ons until there's like 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And by then you're already in the 50s. So Lee Bueller says, do you think they'll cover? Yeah, we do think they'll cover. I said 48-10. That's 38 points. And that's the spread is 34, right? Jamie's got 52-6. That's 46. Obviously, that's more than 34. So we're predicting a cover. Chris, what do you see as the game plan for Ohio State? We'll definitely get into that next week. We'll probably get into that a little bit before next week. Might even talk about that on the post-game reaction show, which everyone's going to want to catch. Always, we're going about 5 minutes after the game ends. We're giving live reaction, instant reaction to that sort of thing. And there's the morning after recap as well, and then into Ohio State week. So that's what you have to look forward to. I think that'll do it for today's show. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you liked what you heard, please hit the like, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell. We'll see you on Saturday after the game. We'll see you on Sunday in the morning. I'll do my show at 9:30 Eastern, and then into Ohio State week, Jamie. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the games, and we will talk to you on Saturday.